And
Oh,
we are live.
that is great. Welcome back, everyone, Quack and Smite League, to the podcast. Today, obviously, you've already heard good friend Red Sniper here. We're also joined by Cooter, and
And
yeah, say something, Cooter.
and who are you?
I don't know, man. I just kind of like showed up, you know. Um, yeah, I'm Jeremy, and
Rectoplasm.
everyone knows me as the JereBear,
That's fair.
Mod Almighty.
Fair JereBear.
Yes. We got a good show for you tonight. It's a very chill one, of course. The season has kind of begun. There hasn't been a single game played yet, but a couple people have scrimmed. The teams have formed. A couple people dropped. A couple people moved around. So we'll get all of that up to you. But first, we want to cover tonight sort of our thoughts on the draft day, how it all went, um, our initial thoughts there, as well as we'll review some of the players who were drafted and, note some of our favorites or our possible candidates for standout players in this season. After all, there's a lot of people that are new. So it's very interesting to see what we all think here. And then we'll go right into our predictions for week one games. And we'll also give sort of our beliefs on the overview of how the season might pan out. Which teams we think are going to be the top teams, the teams to beat. And conversely, of course, the teams that might struggle, might be in the middling, and will have to find their footing most likely at some point during this season. So, with that out of the way, I'm going to take it over to the man who hosted the event himself, Red Sniper. How do you think went? What were your thoughts uh, looking back at draft day?
How do I put it? What is the greatest word for it? Long. Holy crap, was that a long day for me? Oh man. Um, so that day I went from piecing things together to figuring out how it was all gonna go down. I had released a couple videos previously to the owners and the captains to kind of show how it was going to work. That way, we kind of had a system set up. But it was really the beginning went slower than the end did, and that was mostly down to me trying to play producer, audio man, and host at the same time. And eventually, I just said we need to get this thing moving, and so I went from being really like a lot of host to all right, let's get the producer thing going and we'll get this done.
No, I mean from a viewer's perspective slash an owner's perspective, I don't think it was awful. It was probably a very, very long day for you, and I think the community as a whole thought it was a little long. But overall, I think it was extremely well done as compared to past seasons. I think if you had one person just doing what you were doing with the producing portion, and then somebody else talking about kind of what was going down and things like that, kind of taking your role and splitting it in half would have been
Hmm.
absolutely perfect. But I think the draft went phenomenally, and I think that it was a huge step up from what the QSL has done in previous seasons.
What are you talking about? You don't just like sitting there in a chat room and just kind of watching people on a spreadsheet going, that one.
Pulling,
No, it
I'm
was
pulling the
much.
name out of a hat.
Yes,
Right.
yes. Much more professional, and with professionalism comes a little more time and a little more involvement. So I think I would imagine anyway that things were learned, and season 4 will be even better than season 3, which was better than 1 and 2. So nice job, Brett. Seriously.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the production value was so much higher than the two previous seasons. It's pretty
Hmm.
much unrecognizable, to be quite honest. And you didn't quite stick the landing, but who's gonna do that on the first try, anyways? You know, with practice comes perfection, and I'm sure that when next season comes around, we'll have a better understanding of how that will all work, as well as even better graphics and you know, better
Speaking,
commentary, better understanding of the players being drafted too, since a lot of them are new, so on and
Mm-hmm.
so forth.
I was gonna say, speaking of that, um, I I want to give a huge shout out because there was a hype video at the beginning
Oh
of that.
yes.
Um, and that was excellent. So kudos, amazing, well done. That was just a great video. That was so much fun.
It was.
Yeah, I worked very hard on it. I appreciate it, Cooter.
Yes, it was amazing, man. It was amazing. If we get all kinds of hype videos like that throughout the season, which I wouldn't expect, but if we did, oh my goodness, it would be just phenomenal. Just phenomenal. It was really well done, and I think playing it at the beginning and the end and the middle was very smart as well, trying to make sure that the entire Quacken community saw that video because it definitely deserved eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know I especially played it at the beginning, and then I wanted to make sure that we played it during break because I know that some people had come in during the majors and
Hmm.
were trying to figure out what was going on, and I wanted to make sure we caught them there. And then right before minors, we also played the video there. And then of course I had to play it again at the end as we were wrapping things up because that just
Hmm.
I think it capped off the night great.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Do expect a few more of those. I wouldn't want to put more pressure on the casters, but I will make a video that can be played prior to any particular league game. That just has a
Ooh.
couple things worded differently. And then once we get a few games in, I might start, um, grabbing some clips off of the Twitch streams and off of YouTube, and might
Oh.
try and do, or try and get some replay match IDs and do like some cinematics that I can replace with the Smite cinematics.
Hmm.
Um, you know, stuff like that, just small things.
Hmm.
Um, but if I have time, obviously,
Yeah,
that's
definitely
something I'll
looking
look at.
forward to it though. Definitely looking forward to it.
Did you hear
Yeah,
that? Did you hear that, Quacken community? Make sure you watch the streams and you clip. Make it easy for them.
Yeah, really.
Use those clips.
yeah, man, it'll be a fun time, I'm sure. But yeah, that was a really, like, I didn't do it just to do it. Obviously, like, I volunteer my time here, and I don't like to waste it. I really liked making that video. I've always loved making videos. It's been a small passion of mine. I'm obviously an amateur, but um, you know, at one point I did get paid to make them, but that was a long time ago. But it was fun to make,
So
and I'm
sick.
I'm glad I'm glad that a lot of people uh enjoyed seeing that. So
Round
um
of applause for these two. Insert applause here.
Insert applause here.
Seriously, guys,
I don't
you
have
did great.
applause on my soundboard, so but
Oh, dang, dang.
yeah,
Again,
that
Seriously, good
like
job, guys.
that's part of that production value we'll add later. You know,
There you go. Yes, yes.
yeah, maybe.
things
But
to add applause button.
excellent, excellent. Yeah, but I don't want to sit here and toot our horns here. But I think draft day went really well. All things considered, yeah, it was a bit
Hmm.
long, but that was 16 whole teams, even with one person removed per team from the draft. That was still 80 whole spots to fill.
Hmm.
Yes,
Even roughly
sir.
speaking, if we have no break and each spot takes 2 minutes
Mm-hmm.
per moment, like that's 160 minutes, man.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's still
uh,
nearly 3 hours.
yeah,
So
um,
and
Which is
we
almost
did.
exactly what happened, right?
It was just under 3 hours. Yeah, it
So
was like 2 hours and 48 minutes or something like that total.
yeah, I think it went well.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
there's
think
a
it went
couple
well
things we
considered.
can definitely improve on, but there's a lot of ideas that have been floating around too. Um, and I really liked some of the things that came out of it too. Having the captains come in, announce their picks, even some of them being willing to talk about why they picked them up, um, you know, what their expectations might be for the season. I think that would be awesome. Maybe during the break, having like a secondary or third person come in and like pull aside a captain or an owner and go, okay, so we see what your list is now, what your roster is now. What are your expectations for the upcoming season, or what are you who are you excited to have on this team, something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of give a little bit more of a break before minors. But we'll see what happens. I mean, again, ideas, thoughts, but we are definitely going to keep getting better and definitely keep growing as we continue.
Yeah,
No doubt.
yeah,
And I don't want
for
to
sure.
speak. I don't want to speak for you guys either, but I'm sure if anybody listening has any ideas, thoughts about the draft, how to make it better, I'm sure that the mods will at least hear you out and see if anything could be done to improve it. I think that everybody's goal here is to have the best possible time playing Smite. So if I'm sure if anybody has any ideas, pitch them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did pretty well. One of my
Hmm.
goals for this draft was like one of the most exciting parts about like any draft, especially the pro draft, is like seeing that name go up on the screen. Like, oh, like this is happening. Like that
Yep.
that that was just that was so cool. You know what I mean? And having the majors and the minors in one draft was really good because a lot of the
Uh-huh.
people in the minors got a ton of exposure. I believe at one point our maximum like tuning in viewership, live viewership was somewhere like 110, 120. So
So good.
that's insane. And for the minors, I think it probably peaked at around 70. So that's still like very good turnout. So
That's
I'm
awesome. Hmm.
yeah I'm very very happy about that too. Um,
Speaking
obviously.
of speaking of somebody getting picked, I loved Herc's face when he got picked. I loved it. It
Oh
was
man.
perfect. Perfect. Chef's kiss. Perfect.
Yeah, so for those who might not have been there on draft night, Hercules was my co-host for the night. Did have Jeering Lamb come in for a little bit too, but Herc was there through thick and thin, and headed towards the end of the night, and he's kind of like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna get drafted. I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm getting messages on the side from him, and then as soon as he gets picked up, it was like everything changed, and you could just see his face light up, and it was great. I
Hmm.
was glad to see him get picked up. I definitely think that he deserves that roster spot there.
Hmm.
For sure, and that's sort of what I want to pivot to now. Some of our picks on the roster, because I'm sure a lot
Hmm.
of us had those moments, especially with the subs on majors and minors, just like barely making that cut was pretty big to a lot of people. So
Hmm.
I want to pivot it to that, and I want to give it to Red first. Start with whatever team, and we'll go with you. Uh, you know, who's your best picks on that particular team, or a player
Um,
you want to highlight?
well, why don't we start off with the first team to pick, and let's start off with the number one pick overall, Sub Killer 22 onto Booney Gang. We saw him time and time again prove his dominance in that soul lane, and he's going to be back in that soul lane for season 3. Now it's going to be interesting to see how this season kind of develops, as King Arthur's gotten nerfed, Cucullen's gotten nerfed. A lot of the gods that he made his name on have kind of been thrown to the backside. Even the soul lane in and of itself has kind of been nerfed a little bit in this recent, or in this upcoming update. And we'll see if he's able to maintain that dominance, or if he's going to be relying more on his teammates to kind of say, okay, guys, let's, I need more from the mid. I need more from the carry. I need more setup. Um, I mean, I thought he did wonderfully. I thought he was great. Kind of hit that roadblock towards the end, but I still think that he was phenomenal in his role all season long. And again, it's going to be interesting to see how he pairs up with Dutma as well from that support spot. A season 1 champion going into season 2, got so close, was on a team with a great record, and then it all fell apart right there at the end. It all fell apart in the best of 1, and you're kind of going, "What in the world happened?" Um, but I am looking forward to it, and there's a new face. At least for me, from season 2, you have Aoquin. Um, or I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. Um, but
Quarren? A Quarren, something like that?
I think
Yeah,
it is a
Corin.
Quarren. Yeah, I think that's who it is, a Quarren. Um, but a Quarren's going to be in the jungle for him, and that's going to be a new twist on it, because kind of Subkiller you expect where he is, Dutma you expect where he is. Castler showed his prowess during the prospect games as a great ADC pickup, but Aquarin is going to be one of those where I don't have the biggest grasp on that play, on how he's going to play, and especially in the jungle, which has such an impact on the game. It can really get a lane ahead. It can relieve pressure when it needs to. And we're going to see how that team's going to gel as the season goes on as well.
Hmm. For sure. I mean, it's a very interesting team. You talked. I don't want to give Subkiller a bigger head than what he already has, getting that number overall. But um, he definitely earned it. Of course, there may be new players that perhaps might be better. Some people have been predicting in their tier lists Subkiller dropping, not being really the number 1. But I think he still earned it, at least in this league. We will for sure see. But he's definitely a phenomenal player, a good guy too. But who I want to highlight on this team though is Dutma, because he was not really expecting but kind of wanting to play on the minors. But in the QSL, what a lot of us noticed is that support. I do believe support is probably the hardest role to play. Um, and support in this league particular has a few players that are really really good, and then a lot of players who are serviceable, but they're not going to really be impactful, um so to speak. That's not to BM anybody. That's just sort of how
Hmm.
this league is set up. So Jack is still one of the best supports in this league. You know, in a main role, of course, there you will see a couple people off role and they may be just as good, but definitely one of the best main role supports out there, next to people like Brownside. He's proven that he's earned that spot. So um, really really highlighting him here on the Booney Gang.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. I think Subkiller definitely is deserving of that number 1 overall spot. I think he's got a little bit of competition this season anyway in the solo lane. But even with the nerfs that you had touched on, Red, I think that Subkiller brings more to the table than just mechanical skill, right? Or making an impact from my character versus your character, um, type of style. He brings really really good comms to every team that he has been on. I mean, playing with him, as I've done a handful of times, he is constantly talking. And a lot of these teams, what you'll find out is they're playing with some people that maybe they don't know very well and they're a little shy. There's no problem with Subkiller there. He will talk your ear off the entire game, and everybody will be on the same page when you're playing with Subkiller. But um, as far as what the person that Jeremy touched on with Dotma, he's definitely a top support in my eyes as well. He deserves to be in the conversation with those top guys that you were talking about. And then the jungler, a Quarren, I've never seen him play either. I don't know what he's about, but I've heard very very high praise about him. So for me, the player to watch on Booney is that a Quarren.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. So that's a sort of overview of Booney Gang. A lot of praise here and there. I want to move on next to the Arkham Dragons. There are a lot of good players on this team, captained by Kaneki. The person I'm going to highlight here is Z-Tantalus, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Formerly played in Season 1, was absent for Season 2, and is
Mm.
back once again in the QSL. He, judging by the roster, will not be in his main role at mid, but I do think he can bring a lot of stuff to a team. Um, Alea is obviously like a way better mid and is gonna get that spot over Tantalus.
Mm-hmm.
But I think mechanically he plays very well. Um, I've seen a couple of his clips. I've seen him play before. I one time played in a scrim with him too. Um, he is a great player, and especially if he gets that lead, um, he can really push it. Especially from mid lane. I'm very excited to see what he can bring to ADC. But I expect him to probably do the same if he can manage to hold on to that to a tiny lead. He can push it forward and really uh, make that team force wins and force game threes um, whenever really they shouldn't. Uh, but with Tantalus, I think they make that difference.
Yeah, and one
Yeah,
thing, I mean, I haven't gotten the opportunity to play with Tantalus a lot, but I've played a couple games with him. But the people that I've talked to that play with him, they say that he is not necessarily the number one shot caller, where he's going to tell you this is exactly where you need to be and this is exactly what you need to do. But he is a very, very good team player from what I've heard. And once a call is made, he supports that call 100% and ends up getting there and making the mechanical plays that he has to. Kind of like a hurry win from the SPL. The guy doesn't necessarily have to call anything. He just follows what his team does, and he says, hey, you guys are. I believe in you, and I will follow you. And if it ends up being my death, it ends up being my death. We'll learn from it. But from what I've heard, Z-Tantalus is a very, very good teammate. But for me, on that Dragons team, I mean, Olhea is absolutely ridiculous from what I've heard. Definitely a top tier mid laner in a very mid stacked league. But the guy I'm watching out for is Joe from New York, and I believe he'll be playing support this year. Joe has done phenomenal things from that role in other leagues that I've been a part of. He is the definition of a shot caller. He will tell you exactly what you need to do when you get there to whatever objective is being called, and it's usually the correct one. So him being behind the wheel for that Dragons team makes them just that much more scary. So the guy to watch for me there is definitely Joe from New York.
yeah, and coming off of that, I mean, oh man, um, I mean, Olhea is definitely the one that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. But I kind of want to talk about the person that was picked right before Olhea. Um,
Hmm.
being that there was a snake draft, the Archon Dragons being the 8th pick or the last pick in the first round also got Olhea as the 9th pick as the first pick in the second round. But Half Hero was picked up as the 8th overall pick, and Half Hero is going to be the jungler. And
Hmm.
having a jungle mid synergy with two of what I believe two of the top mechanical players in the league, I think this is a team that, at least when it comes to the heart of the team, um, this is a team to look out for, to be honest. Um, Olhea mechanically is just phenomenal. The stuff I've seen him pull off in prospects was sometimes you kind of scratch your head as a caster and go, are they watching the stream on the other side? Like, are they stream sniping or something? Because you shouldn't be able to do that. And Olhea is able to pull off some of those mechanical plays where he just has an awareness about him. And Half Hero in the jungle has that almost sixth sense where there is a fine line between a good jungler and a great jungler. And a good jungler might be communicative, but maybe might not have the mechanical skills, or maybe has the mechanical skills but doesn't really coordinate things well. Half Hero has that great jungler status where the communication, the coordination, and the mechanics are all wrapped up there. And so him going 8th overall, I think is just a great pickup for that team, and I think is going to make even more of an impact than maybe some people realize.
Fair.
Hmm.
Super fair. Very
Yeah.
fair. Yeah, I've heard great things about Half Hero. I haven't gotten the pleasure of playing with him at all, but I've heard very, very good things. But
Agreed. Why don't you take us away, Coot?
yeah, I wanna
What
I
team do
wanna
you want
talk
to move
about
on to?
your team, Jer.
Oh, okay. I guess I have to shut up now.
So for me, that roster's super interesting, right? Mark Wing's super good leader. And we have I'm a Gamer in support for you, and Raven Strider in solo. Um, Interesting decision to go that direction. I would have swapped them personally, but you guys know that roster better than me, so I think that's probably your best bet. But the two people I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna grab two people here that I want to look out for is obviously you have to watch out for Duck. Duck is one and a half people in the QSL to have two championships under their belt through two seasons. The other one being Yellow Jin, who has a minor league championship under his belt too.
We're not talking
Um,
about that.
but Duck does have two major league titles, so you definitely have to watch out for him, which was the first pick for the Phantoms. But the second pick was Stages, and Stages is a name that I don't know that a lot of people know about. Um, but Stages is absolutely cracked in the mid lane. I mentioned it with the Dragons. This league is stacked in mid lane, and Stages very well maybe the top of the top of the barrel when it comes to talent in the mid lane. So I am interested to see how those two carries perform behind the front line with Raven Strider and I'm a Gamer. Kind of, in my opinion, the counter to what we saw from Glory at Mortem last year, where they had kind of two solo laners, one in support and one in solo. They ran that all year. I think this team's doing the opposite. They have two support players, one running solo and one running support. So definitely watch out for those two carries and what they can do behind I'm a Gamer and Raven Strider. And not mentioning anybody last, but I mean Mark Wings is definitely no slouch either.
Yeah, I think it's going to be I think I really like the roster and how the how the pieces fell, we'll put it that way.
Hmm.
Um but I mean, I know Duck quite well. I still I know I told this story on the draft, but I will still never forget the first prospect game I ever had. And I'm going, I wonder what competitive Smite is like. This will be very interesting. I hope I learn a lot. And I got Duck in my lane against me.
You learned a lot.
I learned how to die a lot, I can tell you that much. Um yeah. Um I still won't forget, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll play my Apollo," and Apollo didn't get through, and I'm going, "Oh, I'll play Rama," and he picks Cupid and just obliterates me off the face of the earth, and I'm going, "Well then. All right. That's how this is going to go." But Duck is an ADC. I think he brings a lot more, not just experience, but also this almost a calming presence to whenever he plays. There are some players that get really amped up. They're very energetic. They always want to be, here, there, and everywhere, and they want you to know. And Duck is always very methodical in how he approaches things. He tries to plan things. He tries to read a situation, and I think that's kind of what makes him a very good, great carry. Is he looks at a situation and he's able to evaluate it fairly quickly. Um, and I I know this is kind of weird, but actually the person I'm most interested in on this roster is the person that was taken last, the sub, Kexen.
Mm-hmm.
He is truly a I guess you would kind of call him, if I may be able to use a biblical reference, a coat of many colors. He is a
Mm-hmm.
guy that can play a bunch of different roles, and the way he plays maybe isn't the most gifted in one role or another role, but he covers a lot of mistakes that maybe something will happen here and there. I know I'm was able to watch him a couple times in prospects, and seeing the way he worked through things, I was really interested in how he was able to always be the synergistic teammate, the guy that always kind of helped out as it went along. And I think he's probably one of the better subs in the majors right now, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. If I may be so bold as to speak about my team, um,
I would love it.
sure. So, this is tentative, because we still got scrims to do and such. Things change, of course, over the course of a season, but yeah, I have to give a shout out to Kexen, being that eighth pick because, um, I knew his mindset. He was talking in a channel that, I was watching, and he was like, man, all these people are getting picked up, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to, to actually play. And I picked him up as a sub, because I know he can cover a lot of places, and he can cover a couple places that we're weaker on. And I love his comms, and I also think he's a stand up dude. And whenever he got picked up, he came into our chat and he was like, thank you so much. And it's always heartwarming to you know be able to make somebody's day. Um, something as simple as an amateur Smite League draft. But he was super excited to get picked up, and we're happy to have him. So that's my thoughts on my team. So I'm gonna do a no you on you, Cooter. We're gonna go to your team because there's a lot I like about the Dukes. Not just the name that you were actually able to make work with the branding, but um, obviously I'm a big fan of the Captain Vakis, but he wasn't in the draft, so I'm not going to really talk about him. Destiny in the jungle, a very interesting place, of course, for him to go. Um, but I think Destiny is one of those players that has a really high potential in this league. He's very young, um, and he has a lot that he can learn, but he can be one of those people that are like a sponge, over the course of 7 weeks, he might go from his level of play now to somebody who could really give you a run for your money at that level, and at
Mm-hmm.
that position. You might end up moving him here and there, but depending on what your ideas are, Coot. But um, I think he's one of these players that as these seasons go on, we're going to see him become highly talented, especially if he keeps up practice, keeps up the hours, and really puts forth the effort. Because I've seen him grow every single season.
Mm-hmm.
Especially he didn't get that MIP, but I think Destiny like was one of the most improved players for sure, coming from the beginning of season 2 to the end. So I'm very excited to watch him for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so um I I kind of want to highlight, and maybe this is just me, and I swear somebody's going to say carry bias, but I really want to talk about Clay City here because this was a guy that I had not heard of before prospects. This was a guy that I had no clue who he was. And he comes into prospects and he's playing against guys like Tantalus, and I think he played against Duck one game. And I'm going, okay, this will be interesting. Let's see what he does. And the first couple games, because I'm guessing they didn't know how to play against him, it was like watching someone who just knew everything about the game. He played his lane very well. He played his matchups very well. He rotated extremely well. And to be picked up in the second round where he was, um, I I thought it was, a great pickup at that time. But Clay City, I think, is going to be someone that you're going to need to step up on this team. I mean, what we talked about how that we are a mid-heavy league right now. We have such great mids in this league. I almost think we have better carries in this league. Um, I mean, just looking down the list, you got Castler, you got Tantalus, Duck, Armor Wolf, and then Clay, and it's like, can I find somebody that doesn't have an MMR of above 1800, please?
Nope.
Give me someone that I can find a hole in at least. And you know, watching these guys play, I always learn so much because they find, even if it's a bad matchup for them, they find some way to make things work. Um, and sometimes it works out well, sometimes it doesn't work out so well, but um, I really like watching Clay play. And maybe that's just me. Maybe we'll call it carry bias. I don't care, but I just love watching them go back and forth at each other because it is so evenly matched right now.
Definitely, definitely. I think ADC is definitely a super strong role as well. Um, the person on my team that I want to highlight
If
is
you would be so bold.
probably, if
It's
I
the
may be
owner.
so bold, is actually Otg. So Otg ended up going for us in the first round of the minor league draft. But after we needed a sub for support for one game that we've played so far, he stepped up, and oh my goodness, did he mesh so well with the team. He was actually going to end up playing ADC in our minors program, but he played so well in support. We can't leave him down there. He has to come up, and he may even play. Right now he's listed as the sub, but by the end of it, he might be the starter in support. We'll have to see how everything shakes out. But one thing I wanted to highlight from our draft is obviously I wasn't drafting alone. Vakas was there. Vakas knows a lot of people in Smite, and I think between the two of us, we had a pretty decent grasp on most of the people available in the major league draft. And then Snowy and I had decent ideas about the minor league as well. But Vakas, we had a plan going in, and our plan was that we were going to draft either Sandman Sam or Subkiller when it came to our turn because we assumed that one of them was going to be there. And then Subkiller goes first overall, and we went, uh-oh, maybe we're not going to get either one. But luckily, Sandman did fall to us. And then the second surprise for us was Clay City, because Clay City was at the top of our ADC list. Um, but immediately following our first round Sandman pick, we see Jared's team go Duck, and then we said, oh no, here comes the ADC run. And then Jalay gets taken, who I think can play a little ADC. I think she's gonna end up playing mid. And then Rye goes, and we think there's no way we're not getting Clay City. But lo and behold, it came all the way back around, and Clay was available, so we had to take Clay. Um, so I think those two players as well are extremely good, if not great, if not perfect players. So I think our side lanes are pretty well off. I think it's just our mid 3v3. If we get that going well, I think our team looks pretty good going into week one. Toot toot.
All
I
right,
guess that
all
I
right.
guess that leads us to the next team then.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
I I I You know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go this way with it. I'm gonna go. Uh, I'm gonna go with the team that. No offense, but there are some team names that I just can't stand. And last year, it was Kepwe Suns, and I refused because I wanted to be professional. So I said the entire name almost all the time. And when they
Yep.
forced me to say the uwu over and over again, I was so upset. And then out of the blue, when a team has to get reformed, what do they name themselves? The Cthulhu Moons. I was so pissed off
You're welcome.
because I had to deal with that. And now, what do I have to deal with this time? Zeus Juice. You know how hard it is for me as a caster to say that without tripping over my tongue.
It's the juice is loose, man. I don't know what you mean.
Zeus
Yeah,
juice loose.
oh my goodness. But so as much as I'm probably not going to like the name and it's probably going to just bug me for no other reason than I'm not going to be able to say it clearly. Um I really I'm looking at this roster here, and so we got Rapid Carnation back. Olive being the strong support selection as a captain. And then going down the list, picking up Rye as carry. And then this person, and this is the person I want to highlight, Margiela. For the love of God, I can never forget now his first freaking game in Prospects. He plays mid, and what does he pick? He picks on her mid, and we're going, okay, that's an unconventional pick. We'll give him the pick. No, no problem. It's unconventional, but still solid. All right. So what does he do for the second game? Sun Wukong, because hey, why not? And he rocks with both of them. He just mechanically blows through people, and I'm going, what in the world is going on? And lo and behold, he falls to Zeus Juice, with the, I believe it was the 10th, yeah, it was the 10th overall pick. It was right after Rye. And I'm like, okay, where are they going to throw him? Because I've seen him on mages, I've seen him on warriors, I've seen him on hunters, and he's mechanically solid. What do you do with him? And lo and behold, we look and they throw him in the soul lane, and I'm going, I think that's his best role. If you look at it, if you've seen him play warriors, I think that's probably his best role. I think he's supposed to be an ADC main, but the way he plays warriors is just ridiculous. And I really like that pickup. I really, really like him where he is. I know you can talk a lot about Rye, but I really wanted to highlight Margiela on this one.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head too. I think no matter where you put Margie, I think that he excels. Um, Mechanically, super gifted. Most gifted, talented, mechanical, maybe in the league potentially. Very, very good pickup. The people that I want to highlight for this team is the Justin connection. Justin who and Justin. Justin who is a phenomenal jungler. And Justin, he's one of the top mid laners in a very, very stacked mid lane league. So though I think between the two of those, if they can get the Justin connection going, that could be a tough matchup to anybody going into that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I also wanted to highlight Sir Justin at the mid lane. You've seen him in a couple other leagues as he looked on into QSL. I'm pretty sure he's been spectating for at least all of season 2. He has shown out. He has a lot of analysis too. He's had a lot of tier lists put out. I think he has a good, solid knowledge of the game, and I think he brings a lot to Link's team for sure. So I'm very excited to see him play. And honestly, Zeus Juice, I kind of just like love their roster for some reason. Like other rosters, I don't like know a whole ton of people, but this one, um, I know pretty much everyone, and I love every single one of them. In terms of just watching them play, so personally my team to watch, but not necessarily for a top spot or anything, but just out of fun. It looks like a fun team to me. But we can certainly move on to the next team that we want to highlight here, and I want to go to the Obsidian Mages, who had a very I would say inventive draft for sure.
That's probably a good word.
That is the word I will choose today. But the person I want to highlight is Owen, um, because Owen didn't think he was going to get picked up, especially in majors. He might have just, have to sit out. He kind of wanted to be on minors too. But Owen, at times, he can, have problems, but I think he's still a very solid solo lane in a solo lane that is going to be very dominated by the top basically 2 or 3 players. One of them being Subkiller, of course. So, really, what you do in solo is you just try against the top teams. It really doesn't matter. But I think Owen can definitely bring a very strong solo lane to all of what teams will end up being near the middle, of course. Um, and I think he's a great guy. Um, Solid player in that role. So that's my opinion of him and that team.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing for me on that roster is the captain, Scarabax. So season one, he plays QSL, and he is one of the top mid laners in the league. Naturally, it wasn't as stacked as it is now. We only had, a handful of masters level players, and I think the league was actually um, it was separated so that you couldn't have multiple masters players on the same team because that would have just been unbalanced. So um, Scarabax was a top mid laner, and he's legitimately at least a diamond mid laner. And then we go into season two. He didn't quite make the cut for the majors. He ended up going to the minors and playing off role in solo, and he rolled through it. Right, he did super well in solo. He looked super strong, super comfortable, but maybe the competition wasn't there for him. Not 100% sure. But this season, going into week one, it looks like we're going to see him at ADC. Have either of you seen Scarabax play ADC?
No.
Yes.
How is it?
Um, it's a lot like him playing mid. It's really, really fun to watch. Um, so I play a lot of casuals with Scarab, and watching him play carry is so much fun. Because he loves that how do I put it? He loves that aggressiveness that some of the hunter kits can give you, but at the same time knows how to manage a lane and manage a role. And now that he's on a side rather than in the mid and having the experience of solo from last season, he's much more comfortable in how he needs to rotate and where he needs to rotate and how he can look for things that way. I think he's going to be a better carry than most people realize.
I believe that. I believe that. I mean, just from his mechanics, I mean, he's a good player. He's a really good player. And I guess that's a fair point that you made. You kind of combine um, mid lane and kind of what you do in the team fight of mid lane, and then the quote unquote being alone of the solo lane that he did in year two. Playing ADC is kind of like taking both of those worlds and just meshing them. So that's a fair point. That's a fair point. I think Scarabax could be interesting to watch though. That's for sure. Good point.
I mean, I kind of want to talk about the Obsidian Mages, and it's not so much an individual player, but I really want to talk about this team composition because they really have sort of the best of both worlds going on. Desi and Jule are amazing mechanical players, supremely talented in and of themselves. I mean, there's a reason why they went 1 and 2. And they are by far probably I would put them in the top 10 mechanical players in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Um and on the other side of that coin, you have Slim and Scarabex, who I know are really good friends, but you have that synergy there as well. And you sort of have this mechanical player mixed with a synergy, and when they get rolling is when things really start to happen. When they really start feeling themselves is really when this team becomes dangerous. And we'll see. We'll see if they become dangerous this season or if they all just, they get shut down and it's just done. But I really want to I think that this team um is not being, at least from some of the previous tier lists I've seen, I don't think this team is getting the respect that it deserves. So I think they may be a bit of a dark horse this season, but we'll see if week 1 and 2 kind of, prove me right or wrong.
That's fair. That's fair. Who do we have left? Who we have?
We have Phenoms
Phenoms and
and
Reapers.
the Reapers. So
Yep.
pick your poison, buddy.
Let's go with the Phenoms. Let's go with the Phenoms
Speaking
because
of
I got their
poison,
starting lineup wrong on my tier list. So might as well might as well cover them first. So the Phenoms, returning champions, at least in
In
namesake.
name, yeah.
Yeah. Um, they still have a fantastic support in Brown side, probably the uh, top support in the league, likely at the very least top three. And then they pick up a top three ADC as well. And then they pick up a top three jungle. So they have three top three talents at three positions. So and then you look at Boogie Dude, he potentially could be top three in solo as well. So definitely a very very strong roster. For me, the person you got to watch there is definitely Brownside. Brownside just brings very special things to the battlefield every time he steps onto it.
For sure. My personal pick there is Armor. I know he's a super fun dude to hang out with. Man, looks like Jesus himself. Um, it's no joke, and he plays his role very well. He plays it methodically. He plays it in 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 a way that you know ADCs are kind of like all meshed together at the moment in the current meta.
Mhm.
Um, you know, just like build wise, there's not a lot of like thought going on. Of course, that's gonna change a little bit soon.
Potentially.
But yeah, potentially we'll see. But um, I just think he's just rock solid, and that's kind of what you want in ADC. I know Red was talking about how this is kind of like an ADC top stacked league, and when you see people like Armor, you have to sort of nod that head and be like, yeah, we do have some of the best ADCs at an amateur level. Um, Armor is just one of them. He is not going to get diffed by anybody for sure.
yeah, yeah, just speaking briefly on this, I know we've got more things to go on and I don't want to take a lot of time with this, but there are certain teams where you can easily say, oh, they're trying to play through the mid lane, or they're trying to play through their jungle, or they're trying to play through their solo. Phenoms, even if you broke it down and said, well, they're trying to play through their duo lane of Brownside and Armor. Yeah, but you could just as easily say they're going to try and play through Omar and Budgie. You could just as easily say they're going to play through Brownside and Viz. That they have enough raw talent that I think that their roster allows them that flexibility. However, I want to call, and I know there are going to be a couple people that are going to be upset with me calling it this, but it almost feels like they have all-in syndrome, where
Ooh,
they just have so much stacked for them that you kind of look at it and go, well, there's no way they can fail. You might as well crown them now because you know exactly how it's going to go. And there's something here, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And maybe it's something on an intangible level that I don't know about yet, but there just seems something a little out of joint. And I think when this team is finally pressed, I think maybe we'll start to see some chinks in that armor. Maybe not in week 1, maybe not in week 2, but I think that if there is a team that is able to challenge them well, I think that maybe Phenoms does, I mean, we only got best of 3 series. Maybe they lose a couple of sets throughout the year and they don't go in as the number 1 seed.
could happen. Could happen.
Yeah, of course. And even as we see, number one seeds are not invincible um, in a playoff setting. So it'll be very interesting, but we have to move on, of course, to the final majors team that we're going to cover, the Underworld's Reapers. My personal lookout for here is Inori. Uh, Inori is a very, very gifted player. Um, and brings a lot to a team, even like in any role, but specifically jungle. Like, I think that team is going to have very good comms when you come from, Boy Greatness there, plus the Inori and Davey at the captain, who's going to be very solid at mid, giving great callouts. I think um, this is going to be a fun team to play on, and I think that they can this roster here, judging by who else is on it, Gingy and even Juke Boots at the sub, I think they can definitely steal some games here and there where you might not expect it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so one thing that we will notice is that Juke Boots is the sub where they did draft Chino of Rays. He was their 4th round pick, but Chino had some real life issues. He's not going to be able to be around and he's not going to be available to play, so they had to pick up someone else. And I think Juke Boots is more than adequate as a replacement for Chino. I still a very, very solid player. Fills a different role than Chino, I would say. But still mechanically solid, great communicator. I think the real issue that they're going to have to work on together as a team is going to be that coordination. You're going to have a high intelligence mid laner, a high intelligence jungler. Gingy played in the minors last year, but is still very, very solid, especially as a solo laner. Um, we'll see how this team coordinates back and forth. Um, and I would love to see what Juke is going to bring to the table as well. I know Chino's still hanging around sort of in a coaching role or helping some people out, but um, I I think this team is going to be able to grow throughout the year, and I think that they're going to surprise some people, pulling off, I think, an upset or two.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, Red. I could see that for sure. I think old Chicken and Rice is gonna be my player to watch out for. That ADC there. He I think will be underrated to start, and I think couple games in, I think you're gonna see that that's no joke. That's no joke. And I think the team as a whole, I think they could definitely steal some games off of some teams. To me, just based on my own thoughts and my own rankings and things, I could see teams, 3 through 8 all being very, very close. Very close. And it's not a far stretch from number 1 to 3 either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just like overall big picture, yeah, like there are definitely teams here that are top quality. We've already talked about them, of course. I think Phenoms definitely fills that role. Um, adequately there as one of the top teams. Uh, After that, somewhere between, in my opinion, the King's Court and Arkham Dragons, I think, sort of fill those other roles as teams who are going to be really high up there. But then again, of course, the rest of the teams aren't like there's not an obvious bottom team here. Is what I'm going to get at. Is that
No
there's
doubt.
no team that you can say definitively is going to be the number 8 or the number 7. I
Mhm.
think after you get across basically the top 2 teams that you would expect, everything is hazy from there. So much chaos is what I expect, and especially in a sense that each team plays each other once before the playoffs. There's a lot at stake in each and every week.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I when I kind of came up with a little bit of the ideas that I pitched to the mod team about, hey, why don't we just have, if we're going to have 8 teams, why don't we just have a 7-week season? And that means that every single week is going to be so important. Um, starting from week 1, going through the rest of the year, if you drop a game, you essentially drop a slot in how you're going to rate for playoffs. And so every week has that significance to it now. Um, so I think it's gonna push these players to be even more on top of their game, and every week means so much now. Um, Not just for the majors, but also for the minors, because we're running the minors extremely similarly, almost identically to the majors teams now. Um, and so the miners are kind of getting their sort of day in the sunlight as well. Having that same captain structure, having the same kind of playoff structure. And I'm really looking forward to what the miners are especially going to bring.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And we can pivot to that. Real going through some of our topics here. So I want to start with the Underworld's Ferrymen team here, because they have Omega Bulldog, and Omega Bulldog was voted season 2 MIP for the majors, the most improved player, and I believe he earned that very much so. He at the beginning of the year did not look like he was going to do much, and by the end he was just defending that lane. He was um, proxying lanes, waves rather, sorry, and just overall playing that solo lane, like he didn't need to rotate. He let the rest of his team do the work, the real leg work, and just make sure that that lane was basically no factor. He could win it easily. So seeing him here in the minors is going to be very interesting against some of these other solo laners who are also very strong, like Satan OMFG and people like Atticus, SPQR. It's going to be a very interesting solo lane in the minors for sure, and I think that he definitely is going to bring a very interesting flavor to that.
I love that matchup that you mentioned. Omega Bulldog versus Atticus. Old teammates turned rivals. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Yeah, but that team's super interesting. I'm interested to see Raptor back in the mid lane role full time for a full season and to see, how he has developed as a player as in the off season.
Yeah, I know we got to see a little bit of it last season.
Hmm.
He mostly spent his time in the carrier role, but seeing Raptor in the mid lane and seeing what he's been able to do in the off season, see how he's going to develop this season, I think it's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward actually to seeing that Ferryman roster. Um, and I, to be honest, I'm really looking forward to seeing the various combinations that this team can pull off. Um, I've seen Omega Bulldog play a couple different roles. Kittens, or Big Bops, he could play a couple different roles. Bad News Bears, we've seen in a couple different roles. Herc has some weird potential outside of the solo lane or outside of the support role. So I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of flexibility that this team can have, but also how maybe that flexibility is going to throw some teams off. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they progress and maybe even how that roster is going to change throughout the season and how the roles of how players are going to get along or what's going to happen. I'm looking forward to it.
For sure. And speaking of a team that is sort of flexible in nature, I'm going to go to the King's Court Knights here because
Ooh.
we have two friends here, two people from the same island, Achilles and Snowy here, and they both fulfill a similar role. And if we're gonna see Achilles truly as the username suggests on the sticks, plus Snowy, I mean you can switch them around really at any given time, and they'll pretty much perform as you would expect. Um, I think with this team, those are like the two people that you'll end up watching out for where they end up going in a matchup. Just to see if you're going to see like emphasis on a support role or emphasis on the solo role. But there's a lot of flexibility for sure.
Yeah, intentionally so too. And you actually, not only are those two both from the same place, my mid laner is also from the same place. So Zombie Crusher is another guy who is from the same place that those two are from, and he also has some flexibility as well. I think the roster as a whole has a lot of interchangeability. And even like right now, our sub is listed as Cousin Eddie. There's a possibility he could start. So I think the flexibility on that roster is what's going to give Snowy and the boys um, some curveballs to throw at the other team. So I'm excited to see all those guys in action going into this season. The minors is going to be so fun.
Yeah, I really think it is going to be fun. Um, I'm, oh man, the miners is so interesting for me because it's like you can look at okay, who are the masters, who are the grandmasters? Okay, they'll be the majors. Wow, it'd be interesting. But after that, like, there's a fair amount of diamond, platinum, gold, silver level players, and you start to go, okay, how can these players mesh together? How are they going to work together as a team, and how do they um, manipulate the game state to kind of help themselves in this? And I'm really interested to see how the Knights are gonna be able to do this. Because as you said, this roster has so much flexibility in it that kind of like the last one where if they start changing up their roster and if they start throwing people in different lanes, you start like scratching your head going, "Oh great, I want to prepare for this, but he could play the lane a completely different way, and he could go this way, and he could go that way." And you start playing 4D and 5D chess with other teams, and I think that gives a great advantage for the King's Knights um, in the minor league. And I think it's going to be an interesting thing how they're going to stack against other teams as well.
No
hmm
doubt. Speaking of potential um, synergy, I'd like to touch on the Charlotte Fury as well. Couple people on that team have some decent synergy with Telly the Basin and Yellowjin. They've played quite a number of games together. What do you guys think about that roster?
I'll let you go first, Red.
Oh boy, you're gonna make me go first.
It is my team, so
Yeah, I know. Um, last year when you look at the roster there, I see three majors players right off the bat.
Mhm.
And then zero, actually four, because zero was a sub and ended up playing anyway.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I see. 4 majors players, 2 of which have a minors championship to their name from last year. um, but then you look at the other 2 as well, and it's like, okay, so they have majors experience. They have, at least last year, they had majors level talent. They have an insane amount of just this vision for the game. So wait, why are they down in minors again? um but I really like, especially like Yellowjin has the flexibility because we've seen him play in, I think last year he played in 3 different roles. I think we saw him in solo at one time, we saw him at mid one time. I know he played carry against me once. And he has that ability, but on top of that, he also has this ability to be a coach and this ability to be a shot caller and to clarify the game for the teammates around him. And I think that that is really going to be a strength on Charlotte. You've got Zero and you've got Yellowjin, 2 very strong, I don't want to necessarily call them strong personalities, but you have 2 strong shot callers to say, look, here's the way the game is going. Here's the way this game is going. And I think that the best way of doing these things is this. And so we're going to execute it this way. Um, Zero, I know, was always very high up whenever I listed him in support role for the minors last year, whenever I did my tier lists. But I also noted that there were some gaps, and there was a reason why he was in minors and not in majors. And I'm willing, I really want to see if he's closed up some of those gaps, if he's made himself even better. And maybe he gets a chance or gets a shot at maybe even popping up into the majors this year. To play for a game or to sub in for somebody. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if the if some of the players who maybe were hidden talents or diamonds in the rough, if maybe they get a chance, even though they're on a minors roster right now, maybe they get a chance at a majors roster. I think that this roster in particular has a couple of people that could definitely push the boundaries of what it means to be a minors team in the QSL. And I'm really looking forward to see what they are able to do in particular, and how they're going to be able to take that mechanical skill and use it in a synergistic way in the team.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be very interesting to watch for sure. I'm not going to sit here and talk about the minors team because it's my own. So obviously I like all of them, but um, like not only do Telly and Yellowjin have good synergy, but Zero and Atticus too as well.
Yeah,
They've
that's
played
true.
a ton of games
Mhm.
together, so this is a squad that is going to be pretty friendly to one another, and I do suspect that there's going to be a lot of shifting and changing as we go through the season. But I I I like this squad. They have a significant amount of flexibility, just like a couple other squads that we've already highlighted, and this is probably not going to be the final look that you'll see at this roster, but um, I don't think even from like my bias perspective, there's really a lot that you can hate on this team for.
Not at all. Not at all. And that's the exciting part about the new format with the orgs is the ability to just you can pull up some of those guys or girls from the minor league and have them play in a majors game. I love that about this league, and I hope that it allows some of these higher level minors players to get in some games and see, what am I missing? What are my gaps that I can fill in order to be in the majors next year? It's a huge point.
Shall we then go to the next team here?
Yeah, where are we going? Where are we going? We
Oh,
got A handful
I
of teams here.
I gotta go this way with this. I gotta go to the Booney Boys. Um, so Booney Boys, the minor league affiliate of the Booney Gang, Jeering Lamb as a captain. I know you might know him a little bit, Cooter.
Uh-huh.
But the other two guys I know quite well, Sphinx and Tubby Follower. Um, two guys that I played with for all of season 2. And just how do I put this? Two of some of the funniest guys I've played with, but two guys that are also mechanically skilled. And maybe not necessarily the best of the best in their respective roles, but definitely guys that are willing to learn, willing to communicate, and trying to get better in every sense of the word. Um, just a couple of great guys to be around. And something I think is interesting is the way they have this roster set up right now, where it's going to be Jeering Lamb as support.
Hmm.
Um, I've seen him before play carry. I've seen him play mid. I've never seen him play support. So I think this is going to be an interesting setup. They do have a Risen, who is definitely a support, but he is subbing, and then we'll see how Bacon Crumbs does in the carry role as well. I think this is going to be an interesting team to watch and see how they perform together in roles that maybe they're not 100% comfortable in.
Yeah, I think you hit it again. I think Jeering in the support role is very interesting, but I think that could potentially be somewhere where he excels. He does have a very good mind for the game. Um, so I think putting him in that support role, which is, it's a difficult role to play. Um, no bias here by any means, let me tell you. The support role is tough. But putting him there and having him rotate into that mid 3v3 with Sphinx and Tubby, um, I think could be very, very interesting for that team.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of interesting portions of this Booney Boys team. I really like Niall though. At the mid lane, we saw him. He's an EU boy, and he didn't really lose to anyone in previous seasons rather. Uh, Miners team. Um, but I think he's a solid player that you can trust not to lose that lane and let the other lanes really pull in. We'll see what Bacon Crumbs and Arisen are going to be able to do there. Um, if Arisen has to take any roles there, depending on you know how how the actual schedule goes out, because Tubby Follower is an EU player at the end of the day. Jeering Lamb in there, uh, Uncle Fable. I haven't been able to see a whole ton of, but I imagine that this games against Booney Boys are probably going to come down to the side lanes rather than the mid lane.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that's a fair assessment on that one.
Yeah, so with that, we can move on to another of these teams here, and among those that we still have to look at, I believe one of them is the Chosen Guans here. Um,
What a fantastic name.
yeah, the Chosen Guans. It's a fun one, of course. I'm sure Red loves all of Link's suggestions for names.
Always,
Um,
always and forever.
the one person I do have to say stands out on this roster though is Amish. That man has a significant amount of flexibility, as we've been talking about. The miners have a lot of people who can go a lot of different places, and Amish is just a strong player at this particular level. Um, I think he can diff people given the right circumstance, but I don't think he will lose that in this context, the jungle role, to anybody. Um, at the very least, he ends up tying or maybe being slightly behind But he is a fantastic person at whatever he ends up going to, but certainly jungle.
Yeah, I'm excited for Ban Herc on that team. That's he can be a menace. Um, fantastic player. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they have him playing ADC, right?
Mm-hmm. Looks
That's
like it.
good to see too. That's good to see. That's his main role. Um, he's been moving around a little bit in a couple of different leagues, so good to see him in his main role. I would expect to see him shine, and I think he's the player to watch on that team.
Yeah, I'd also like to just put out a little bit of a ping to Awesome as well. That soul lane. I mean, when you look at the other soul laners in the minor league, I think Awesome can go toe to toe with almost any single one of them. I think his battle against Omega Bulldog is going to be excellent. I'm really looking forward to when they play the Ferryman and how that game is going to shape up. Um, really looking forward to what Catgirl Chipotle is going to be able to do as well in the mid lane. She was voted the number one or the most improved player in the minors from last season. We saw vast improvement from her, and if she improves on a similar scale this season, it's going to be amazing to see what she's going to be able to pull off.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Then let's go to Lil Noms. Lil Noms, what do you say, gents?
Pick
Do we have to?
pick your poison.
Do we have to? I love it. I love it. I think for me, the player I want to shout out here is Pabs. Pabs really hasn't played in many leagues. I think he was in a couple streamers sub leagues or something like that. But no, not really any draft leagues as the QSL is. Pabs is a fantastic player, great personality. I think he brings very good vibes to a team. So I think he could be a huge asset for that Lil Noms team.
Yeah. So Little Noms has this air about them right now. And I guess it's partially because of the Phenom's name that's been attached to them. But I think that they're going to be in an interesting spot this season. They've got a couple of very solid players, a couple of very good players, but um, I think there's a couple of players that could definitely see work or use work, try and fill some of the holes in their games. And I think there's a couple of players that maybe are kind of on that border of majors minors, but there's a lot of players also that are um they are here and they're going to grow. And I think we could see maybe a couple of players on the Little Noms actually be in the talks for the most improved player in the minors. I think that's going to be uh, uh, an interesting development throughout the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot to say there. Obviously, there's and a lot to say about this Lil Noms team. I think they're a very strong team. I don't even really want to like pick somebody out. Um, yeah, just not necessarily because I not because they're all like gonna run the minors, but um, I just think that this is a very solid draft.
hmm
And that's all there is to say. Matt riding the bench, we'll see whether or not he gets called into any games here or there, but um, this is a very strong team. One of those teams definitely like depending on the matchups, you want to be very careful as you tread. Um, so that's what I think.
No doubt, no doubt. Now who do we have here? We have the Lords. The Lords
Mm-hmm.
with the first overall pick in the minors draft. They take Cyber. I was super surprised to see Cyber drop down to the minors. But I mean, obviously that would be the player to watch for me. But I'm not gonna pick that one. I'm gonna pick Blazon Raven. Um, Blazon Raven is another guy who is just I mean, he's a fantastic player. I think that if he puts in the work, he could be a majors level talent. But he just needs a little more time on the game um, to improve, and I think he could be, he could be the most improved this year as well. I'm very very excited to see Blazon Raven.
Yeah, I think they have a fairly good roster there. It's gonna be interesting to see because you've got Cyber, you've also got Honkler being picked up. Um, but another interesting thing I would say is this is the only roster out of all of them that has decided that their captain is going to start as a sub. Um, yeah, so Glasson Volpez, also known we knew him last year as Ice Fox, and or Zariak. Um, and he's going to start off on the bench, or I'd say bench, but he's going to start off as a sub. Um, and when you look across the board, it's like, wow, I for a captain to kind of be humble enough to say, you know what,
hmm
I want to give these players the best chance to succeed, and I think the best chance for them to succeed is going to be putting me on the bench and letting me learn a little bit more. I think that's great humility coming out of him, and I think that's exactly what you need in a leader as well, is knowing how to evaluate players and putting them in their best positions. And I think that for right now, this might be the best position for them to win, but things could change in the future.
For sure, for sure. I mean, one of the biggest questions is coming in so far, since these roster spots aren't really final, is like, is this the best choice? And so far, they've determined that this is the best course of action for their roster. But of course, we might see a return of Zariak at some point or another, depending on the performance. A lot of these minors teams are going to be like that, where we're going to look at how they perform, and judging based upon those performances, we will probably end up seeing roster changes. It's actually very exciting, as opposed to last year's minis, which was much more chaos than it was excitement. So,
Oh, I don't know what you're
um,
talking about. I had palpitations through half the season.
I'm surprised you're still living, buddy.
Dude. Oh,
But anyways, like,
Speaking of
yeah.
chaos,
speaking
Speaking
of
of chaos,
chaos.
yeah, go ahead, Cooter.
speaking of chaos, the captain of the final team, the Obsidian Knights. Who are you guys excited to see on that Obsidian Knights team, and what do you think of that team?
Oh boy.
I'm
Um,
actually, to be honest, I'm actually excited to see Chaos. Um, I think he's going to
The
be
person, right?
yeah, the person, yeah.
not the
Um,
concept.
oh man, no. As a mod, the last thing I want to see is Chaos, but um, no, but Chaos tonight playing carry in that team. I think he has an excellent setup. I think he has a good grasp on the game. He's a great guy and a good communicator. And I'm interested to see what they do with Goody and Peaceful. So Goody was their first selection, and Peaceful was their third, and they're going to be playing jungle mid. Um,
Hmm.
I'm really interested to see how this duo works out because they're both very good players in their own rights. I just want to see how they're going to be able to mesh together, and I think that's going to be a key to how they're going to play this season.
Yeah, exciting team for sure. I think you hit it on the head that mid 2v2 could be huge for them. Chaos, one of those people that I have actually never seen play the video game, so I'm not sure what to think of that role. But another thing that roster just changed up is they did just make a trade to pick up Enraged Moose. a normal support player, support ADC, going to be going over to the solo role. So I'm intrigued to see how Enraged Moose does in the solo lane.
Yeah, I mean that recent trade just changes things up a little bit, but there's a lot to be excited for about this particular roster. Of course, you know same boat as you. I'm excited to see what Chaos brings to the game. Um, Wolfman, I don't think I've been able to catch any of the games he's played in, but um, just judging by a lot of these characters that I've seen play a lot, well, not seen but known that they've played a significant amount of prospect games. It's going to be very interesting to see how they play on a set roster with expected, uh, you know, things you can control and see what
Mm-hmm.
their results are going to be. Being the minors team in that franchise, uh, you know, there's a lot to like here.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I think that as a whole, I mean, I know that we've gone pretty long about the rosters, but there are a ton of players, new players, old players, a ton of players that are just so intriguing to see this season. So definitely some very, very good Smite that we're going to see, not only at the majors level, at the minors level as well. Um, so I'm definitely excited for this season, fellas.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Mhm.
no doubt about it. It's gonna be a pretty good time. And as we get into that, I want to get into some week one predictions. You know, we don't have to really spend a whole lot of time thinking about the matchup because still a lot of it is pretty much up in the air. We these aren't final rosters, and even then, this is week one, so there's a significant amount of chaotic element to it. But
Hmm.
just initial thoughts, of course. So the first matchup I want us to look at here, Booney Gang versus the Reapers. What do
Booney
you?
versus Reapers, huh?
Yeah, yeah, that is week one matchup.
Huh.
What is your thoughts on the three game set? 2-0 in either direction, a 2-1 close game.
Yeah, I think it's probably 2-0 in favor of the Booney Gang. I think that they have a lot of quality across the board when it comes to just pieces that they have. I think a couple of the roles are pretty close. I think ADC is probably pretty close. And jungle might be pretty close as well. But I think that Booney Gang definitely has stronger overall players across the board. So I think I would go 2-0 in favor of Booney Gang.
Red.
I'm actually gonna go 2-1 Booney Gang. Um, I think that overall, I think Booney Gang might be able to mesh a little bit more, but I still think that there is still enough talent and there's still enough coordination. I know scrims have been going on, and maybe it just comes down to a Nori diff, but I still think they might be able to sneak one game out from Booney Gang.
Yeah, yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think that given the chaos factor here, I think these teams are close enough that we're going to see a 2-1 in either direction. I don't think any one of them is going to be able to manage a sweep, even if it's in favor of the Reapers, which none of us have voted for. Um, I honestly think that there is enough firepower on both teams in a lot of different roles that we can see a very, very close matchup. But I will give it to Booney Gang simply because of what we talked about before in terms of overall skill level. So, next matchup Phenoms versus the Zeus Juice. And I will start off giving this the strong 2-0. I think a lot of those players on Phenoms are going to have enough synergy. I mean, I know that Brown, Viz, and Buggy have a significant amount of synergy, and I think that given that their actual level of talent, they should be able to arrive at a very quick 2-0. Not to say it won't be close in either of the games, but that is my opinion.
I tend to agree with you, but I think that Zeus Juice is a team that's going to surprise a lot of people this year. Insider information: Juice had a scrim. I think it was yesterday or the day before. I don't remember. But they faced a pretty good team, and they just had their way with them. They absolutely destroyed them, from what I heard. So I'm actually gonna go. I'm still gonna go Phenoms, just based on sheer talent. But I'm gonna go 2-1 Phenoms on this one.
That leaves it to me. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of what I'm still going with Phenoms, but I am so close on the 2-0 or a 2-1.
hmm
I kind of I want to go 2-0, but my heart's telling me go 2-1, and for this reason, um I think that as serious as teams want to be in week number 1, I think Phenoms are still just having fun, and I think that there's going to be an element there where maybe the competitive juice comes out of the roster for Zeus Juice, and I think that that's where maybe they're able to take like a game 1 and then Phenoms wake up for 2 and 3. So I'm going to go 2-1 to Phenoms.
All right, awakening the Zeus juice. I like it. So the next matchup, I will leave to you two, as it does include a team that I am the owner of: Obsidian Mages versus the Pittsburgh Phantoms. Go for it.
Ooh,
Oh, come
ooh,
on.
that could be a.
You don't want to have a say, and then they, when it comes true, they go mod diff or something like that, or owner diff. I mean, come on.
Both are true
Maybe.
in his scenario. Oh my
Right?
goodness.
I have all the cards.
All the cards. All the
Oh
cards.
my goodness.
Cooter, go ahead. Take
Another.
this one away.
I think it's going to be another really good matchup. Probably the best one of the week, in my opinion. I think that the Phantoms end up taking this one, 2-1 though. I think the Mages do end up stealing one. The more that I talk about Scarabex being in the ADC role, the more that I'm like, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's really good. I don't know. I haven't seen it firsthand, but I am still gonna go 2-1 Phantoms though.
Okay. Since Jeremy decided to puss out on this one, I guess I'll have to take the I guess I'll have to take the mod diff issue. And I'm actually gonna go 2-0 for the Obsidian Mages.
Oh,
Right? Everybody else has had a good, like, one game that's gonna be their good strong, yeah, 2-0. I'm gonna go 2-0 with this one. I think that there is some initial synergy that happens with the Obsidian Mages, and I think that if Pittsburgh is not aware of what's going to go on, and yes, I think Duck is going to be an awesome player for Pittsburgh, and I think Mark is no slouch either. Um, but I think that the Obsidian Mages are able to just I think it's going to be a good game, but I think they're going to take it 2-0. I'm going to go with that. I know it's going to be a good game, but I think they're going to take it 2-0.
hot takes.
Yep. Spicy.
All right, and I expect my good friend here, Cooter, will do the same though for
Oh yeah.
his Mages roster. The final matchup: the King's Dukes versus the Arkham Dragons. And honestly, in this matchup, I think it's again a very very close game. Um, honestly speaking, like I look at both these rosters and I see a ton of very talented players in a lot of different roles, and not necessarily roles that they will match up in. So it's going to be a very chaotic game, is my initial prediction. But I think the Dukes will get the better of the Dragons in a 2-1 victory.
I mean, this is really tough for me too, because if I look across, I'm like, okay, so It's Clay against Tantalus, it's Drew against Joe, it's Vacus against Ulhea, it's Destiny against Half Hero, it's Sandman against Kaneki, but it's so much more than that too. I mean, yeah, you can line them up lane by lane, and especially in early game, that's what it's going to be. But man, this is the biggest problem with it being so early in the season too. Is you tend early in the season to go with the mechanical skill will take it first. Then eventually teams will coalesce and there'll be something more there. But if you start off with mechanical skill, I kind of want to go with the Archon Dragons. Ulhea has this ability to be a game changer just himself. And if he's allowed to free cast, I think he's going to be able to even just take a game himself. He has that ability to just throw things on his shoulders and say, okay, guys, we're going to the finish line, whether you like it or not. And I think Half Hero is going to kind of have the same thing. So I'm going to be weird and I'm going to go 2-1 for the Dragons.
Oh,
No, it's fair. It's fair. I mean, a lot of these players are very close, and there's different matchups. I think it's going to be a chaotic game, but
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that's entirely fair. So we move on to the minors now. So first recorded matchup here, we have the Booney Boys versus the Ferrymen. And from my personal opinion, I think that the Ferrymen are going to take the best in, again, a tight set, 2-1, because I believe Omega is going to be a very strong player there. And I'm not quite sure what Uncle Fable is going to be able to do against that. But when it comes to the Booney Boys, then, like, you have very strong mid lane matchup, very strong support matchup. Um, I think it's going to be a very, very awesome game, especially to see Raptor back in that original role, see Herc back in that original role after a bit of strife in season 2. So um, the Ferryman might be stronger than I expect, but even in that case, I give myself a safe 2-1 victory for Ferryman.
yeah, I'm gonna go the opposite direction. I'm gonna go 2-1 for the Booney Boys. I think that they have that synergy that you were talking about before. So I think that that's going to carry over into this season. And I think they will have a very, very good early season to kind of build the rest of the season on. I got 2-1 Booney Boys.
All right, that means I got to be the tiebreaker here. I have seen a lot of these players play, especially being in the minor leagues myself last year, being able to look at many of these players, both the minors and the majors. Because if you look at the Ferrymen, 4 of their starters were on major teams last year. And in fact, if you pull Kittens, that's 5. 5 of their original 6 are starters on major league teams.
Uh-huh.
And so as much as I look at it and go, wow, the Ferrymen just have a lot of things that are stacked in their favor. Um, it's really hard for me to go against Booney Boys on this one. But again, Jeering is not in a carry role. Yes, Niall is in his mid role, Sphinx is in his jungle role, and they're comfortable there, but Jeering is not in carry, and I don't know how Bacon is going to be able to go up against Louis effectively. And so I'm actually going to go 2-1 to the Ferryman on this one. I think it's going to be close, but I think it's going to go 2-1 to the Ferryman at the end of the day.
All right.
Ooh.
All right. Yeah, fun stuff right there. So the next matchup is the Lil Noms versus the Chosen Guans, which I will give a 2-0 in favor of Lil Noms. I think that they're going to be way too much to handle for the Chosen Guans in a lot of roles, regardless of who plays where, really. Um, Satan is a very, very strong player. And if Dual Peg Leg is able to play, given that he is EU, time differences and stuff like that. I think that that's a very strong team just building forward, and I don't see really much of what can happen later. I mean, even if Awesome Failure can basically stalemate Satan, I still think there's enough threats elsewhere, especially with Rube on that carry role, that I think that Chosen Wands are just gonna not be able to really handle this matchup effectively, especially it being a little bit early. So that's my prediction.
Yeah, I'm
I
with you. I'm with you. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead. No,
I
you
was gonna
first.
say for all of the reasons you just said, I'm gonna go 2-0 Lil Noms as well. Yeah.
No doubt. I think I don't think we have to elongate that one. I think it's 2-0. I think the Lil Noms are just the probably if
Top
not the
three minors.
strongest, yeah, if not the strongest minors team. I think they um they're up there. They're up there. Where I think that the Chosen Guans are, some players that I think are very good. But I think that they got some work to do to build up to that top three. So I got two little noms as well.
All right, there we go. In the next matchup, of course, I will let one of my other friends here start with. We have Obsidian Knights versus the Charlotte Fury. Take it away, either of you.
Red, after you.
Oh boy. So this is just this is one of those I'm really looking forward to, because when you look across the board at all of these players, I think they are so even. Just straight up, I think it's a very even fight across the board. I think there's a little bit of skill difference. And I think because of that, I think it goes 2-0 in favor of the Fury. Not by
Woohoo.
much. I think the Knights could take a game, but I do think it goes 2-0 in favor of the Charlotte Fury.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's 2-0 in favor of the Fury. I think that um the dual lane power that that team is going to have is going to be absolutely ridiculous, and just the two carries on the team will probably they're another one of the teams that are, in my opinion, in the top three. So I'm going to go 2-0 Fury as well.
All right, and that moves us to the final matchup here: King's Knights versus Ark Lords. And I'm gonna make my friend here a little bit unhappy. I'm going to kind of say, and by kind of I mean really say, Ark Lords take it 2-0. I think Ark Lords is a very strong team, and this is somewhat on just like from what I remember of these players playing, Cyber being that number one pick, of course, Blazing Raven, Beaten Crayons. I think this team is strong enough to not really dominate the set, but in two close games, I think Arc Lords can win.
Um, for a lot of the same reasons, I'm actually going to go 2-1 Ark Lords. Um, I think that the King's Knights have a great setup for potentially moving things along by individual players, but I think when it all comes down to it, Smite is a team game, and you have to have the capabilities as a team to push things as five. And I think between Honkler and Cyber and Bramble, and what I've seen out of Beaten Crayons, I think that that lineup and how they are understood already, how they can front to back team fight, I really like what they're able to do already. And because of that, I'm going 2-1 to the Ark Lords.
All right. And there you have it. That brings us to the end of the week one overlook. And, we've already talked about our sort of feelings about top teams and middling teams. So this is the chance to add any of your opinions here. I'm going to reserve myself um, for any judgment there. But this is your final chance before the season truly begins, either of you two.
No, I think I put out the power rankings or the tier list, and that's how I felt at the time. I don't think it's changed a whole lot. It has changed a little bit, but I don't think it's changed enough to make another comment about it. What about you, Red?
I will be putting out my tier list probably in the next couple days.
So look
After
out for that.
yeah, after a couple of the moves that have gone on. I wanted to make sure I got mine out after the 48-hour period of the quote unquote free trade. Um, and I wanted to make sure that people were starting to scrim and I had a little bit more information on things. But I am looking forward to how this season is going to shape up and some of the things that are still in the works. I know that there's a lot of people that are concerned about some of the things that have been talked about. Um, and honestly, I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, the mods are trying to do things where everybody's going to be able to have fun. And it takes time to do that. And so I'm asking at least whoever's listening, be patient. But at the same time, I hope you guys are just having fun with this. I hope this is our best season ever, and I hope that it brings us into the future and sets us up for an even better season 4. And I hope that people talk about season 3 as wow, that things were really great. And then when season 4 hits, even more stuff. Wow, it's really great. So, but as we start off season 3, yeah, let's get it on, man. Let's just do this thing.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited, of course, as well. I'm not gonna speak as a mod here because Red has already done so. I'm just hoping that people playing are going to have a good time. At the end of the day, this league is not about whether or not it is sweaty or whether or not it is fun. Fun, quote unquote, or whatever your definition of fun is. I don't think necessarily you can sweat and not have fun. Like, I don't think those two things are, exclusive. But I hope at the end of each and every game, everyone can say, you know what, that was a good game of Smite. All of the players, all of the people who are watching the cast, they can sit down and go, you know what, that was really an interesting time, and that's all I think this league should ever provide, and that's what I'm really looking forward to. Um, it should be really good time. I don't see from these rosters so far any of the problems that reared their heads in season 2. Of course, that took a couple weeks in, of course, but um, with a shortened season, comparatively, I think that a lot of players will have a ton of enjoyment, not just with the league games, but with their teammates and with scrims that they can have with other teams as well, between league matches. I think there's a ton of ways that both in majors and minors people can learn a lot and have a significant amount of fun doing so.
I love it. I want to do a fun thing.
Go
Uh-oh.
for it.
I just thought of it right now.
Go for it.
So, this has been a very long podcast, right?
Yes, it has.
If you have made it to this point in the podcast, if you would like to message me personally the word mashed potatoes, 2 words, I will gift you a sub to the Quack and Smite League.
That is
The word
awesome.
is mashed potatoes.
The 2 words.
Yes, 2
The
Yeah.
words.
food item. 2 words, one item, one might
There you
say.
go.
Messages to
So
me. The subscription is yours.
yeah, message it to the King Cooter, uh #9376 on Discord, or if you know any of Cooter's other ways to contact him. Um Go for it. Message that. The first one to do so will get that prize right there.
Woohoo.
You'll have to specify your Twitch account, of course, but that is that. And thank you all, to those of you who made it this far, for listening. This has been a great time with some
Mhm.
of the best people I could ask for in terms of analysts. And with that, I leave you to the last parting words, Cooter and Red.
Good evening, y'all.
Have a good one. And remember, it's season 3. Let's have some fun, man. Let's get it on.